I'm now going to hand over to Samuel Rhymes, who's a volunteer from the Art Beyond Belief programme.
Okay, so it's great to see everyone here. We had some wonderful talks this morning, very thought-provoking, very inspiring. I'm no stranger to isolation. I was diagnosed with bipolar around 2013. And in this talk, I'd like to talk about what isolation and depression was like for me, some things I did to help myself, and some general things that other people can do. Now, you might have noticed that I have a physical disability. It's not easy to not spot it, and isolation is specifically is very common with people with disabilities for some obvious reasons, because one, we can't get out as much, and two, the way people react is not always super palatable. What happens is that sometimes a person will see you have a disability and they won't know how to engage with you, how to respond to you, and therefore they don't know how to deal with you as well as your disability. And for some people, what happens is the situation becomes so uncomfortable that they don't want to have social interaction, which then brings isolation again. Now, in my personal experience, I experienced, during my first years at university, a very, very severe depression and very, very severe isolation. And what I've realized is that isolation is hand in hand with depression. And the more my depression intensified, the more my isolation intensified. So, you know, I was on the very extreme end. I wouldn't get out of bed very much. I had no motivation. I didn't want to be around people. I had no desire to do anything at all. So, how do we surface from isolation? Right? So these are the kind of things that I can give you as, you know, purely practical advice. It might not be the most scientific advice, but it is some advice that I have found works. This is 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is kind of what I like to call the kind of fresh air idea. So the very first stage is get some fresh air. Don't stay in your house, don't stay in your room. You don't have to talk to anybody, but go out there, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. You know, consistency, if you can do that for 5 days, for like 3 or 4 weeks, that is a huge achievement for you. If you are lucky enough to live with other people, make an effort to talk to them. Say, even if it's just to say hi. Once you've kind of realized that you have this issue, it's important that you start addressing 2 things. Your diet and your hygiene will go along with that. The second stage, and the more difficult stage, was more difficult because you have to start trying to push yourself to socialize with people. Now, what is important also that you start very small. So it may be that you can have a one-on-one conversation with someone close to you. Now, for me, it helped me to talk about to that person how I was feeling isolated, how I was feeling depressed. However, it might not be easy for you. For you, it might be easier to talk about a mutual hobby, or even just simple small talk. Well, what you need to do is slowly increase these things. And when you first start going to things, it can be anything. Maybe if you have a close friend around you, ask them to come with you, because then if you need to leave, they understand why. And the final part of what I want to say is that there is hope. And it sounds kind of cliche, but the sun will come out of the dark clouds. And one of the ways that you can push yourself to do this, one of the great things, is there's so many ways that you can use to get out of that isolated state. It could be learning something new. Look at what David and Amel are doing with the Looking Glass courses. You know, that was one of the things that I did, because I was very isolated after I came back to university. I didn't have many things to do, but that was a great start for me. It could be focusing on your faith. We've heard today a lot of things about how important faith can be in combating isolation and loneliness. And one of the things that really works, and I think works for me especially, was make a commitment. So if you look at, for example, the Looking Glass courses, that's or even later, advanced courses that's, 12 weeks or 10 weeks where I've lost my notes, sorry, where you have to make a commitment. So every time that day comes in the week, if you don't want to come out, it will give you the motivation because you said you had to be there. And therefore, gives you much more motivation to be there because someone is relying on you. And it's not just you and yourself. And any of these I've discussed, if you manage to do any of the things I discussed, that is a big achievement to somebody that is suffering from extreme isolation. I feel very privileged to have been part of this, and thanks very much for listening.